Joins me now live from Lahore, I think, Mr. Khan. Is that correct?
That's right, Sangita. I'm sitting in Lahore.
The pictures that we saw, as I say, were sent around the world. They created deep shock in Pakistani communities in the diaspora. Just describe to us how that arrest came about and what it felt like to be in the middle of it all.
Well, Sangita, it was meant to create shock, and it was meant to provoke my followers to demonstrate, go out in the streets, because I was on bail. There was no reason I should have been arrested. I was sitting in the precincts of the Islamabad High Court, about to appear in the court, and I was abducted, and it wasn't the police. It was basically a commando action. And I guess I should be flattered that at the age of 70, they needed commandos to pick me up. I mean, police could have sufficed. I wasn't going to resist arrest. But it wasn't an arrest. They abducted me from there. And later on, and let me say, abducted like I was some sort of a terrorist. I mean, the way they came in, broke the windows, beat up the staff, beat up the people who were guarding me, beat up the lawyers. And then the way they took me in this Jeep, so it was going to provoke a reaction. And there was a reaction because the Supreme Court later ruled that this was unlawful, what they had done. But the reaction, there was a reason why the government and the establishment wanted the reaction, because they used that to crack down on my party. And 10,000 people in 10,000 members of my party within 48 hours were jailed. And all my senior leadership was jailed. And this crackdown, they justified because there were these demonstrations. And in the demonstrations, there were about 4 buildings that were set on fire. And they based this on the arson, this crackdown. So we've had the most unprecedented crackdown in the history of our country. It's never happened like this before.
Mr. Khan, the Pakistani government, of course, and the ruling party take a very different view of what happened. They have filed 160 criminal charges against you that range everywhere from corruption all the way up to terrorism charges. The Interior Minister, Rana Sanullah, accused you of personally planning the attacks on military installations in the past, and they say that you are somebody who is attempting to destabilize democracy in Pakistan. What would you say to that?
Well, firstly, there were already 140 cases on me before this incident. So 140 cases of 40 or 50 of terrorism and blasphemy and 2 of corruption and so on. I mean, sedition, treachery against the government and so on. So this only triggered more cases. While I was in jail, I mean, I was completely cut off from everyone. I mean, since then, I've had 30 more cases on me. So, which again include terrorism and so on. But my point is that surely there should have been an independent investigation of what happened after I went to jail. Surely this arson should have been investigated independently. Bear in mind that there were 25 non-violent people protesting peacefully were shot dead. There's no mention of 25 members of my party shot dead, and about 50 having bullet wounds. Some have, 2 have lost their legs. One is, paralyzed. So there's no mention about what happened, the crackdown that took place. So there's no independent investigation.
Understood.
We claim that this arson was deliberately done to actually justify this crackdown. We believe that this was exactly what happened when Adolf Hitler used in 1933, the arson in the German parliament, in the Berlin parliament. He used that to crack down on the communists and just finished off all opposition.
I understand your point.
This is what's happening here.
I understand your point, which is that you're accusing the Pakistani government or the Pakistani ruling party of trumping up claims against you and inciting violence in order that they can find a reason to arrest you. On the 7th of June, Al Jazeera reported that you had been formally named in connection with the killing of a lawyer who had accused you of high treason. What would your reaction to that be?
Look, this was one of the cases which subsequently was thrown on me. A lawyer out of 150 cases, that now it's 170 cases, then 150. One case was of a lawyer having a sedition case against me. It was so insignificant, that case, that it doesn't even register on my radar. Out of 150 cases, why would I worry about an additional case? So this lawyer gets assassinated. The wife says it's a family feud. The son initially claimed it was a family feud. Then he was kept by the authorities for 12 hours, and then he changed it to blaming me for the murder. Obviously, I'm going to contest it. It's a joke. But let me just say one thing. Look, why is the government doing this? So let the listeners understand what is going on in Pakistan.
Well, I was going to ask you about this because when your arrest was reported and we saw those images around the world, many people were commenting, both inside and outside Pakistan, saying that the reason this was happening is because you had colluded with the Pakistani army to gain power, and when you fell out of favour with them, they essentially kicked you out. And they're going to ensure that you no longer have a part to play in Pakistani politics.
Well, partly correct, because in 2018, when we won the elections, we did not collude with the Pakistan army. We won the election, but half of it is right that the army did not oppose us. So if at that time, if the army had opposed, it is arguable that they are so powerful that we might not have won the elections. But subsequently, since I've been ousted from power, the army or the military establishment is siding with the government parties. There are 12 of them. Now, in the 37 by-elections since then, since me being out of power, my party has swept 30 of them. Now, all opinion polls say that the rating of my party is 70-80% above, which is why the government is petrified of elections. They violated the Supreme Court verdict, which was supposed to hold elections on the 14th of May. They refused because everyone knows that whenever there are elections, my party will win. So instead, what they're doing is trying to ban the party. So because they can't play the match, they want a technical knockout. And hence, all these 170 cases. Remember, I am known in this country for 50 years. I never had one criminal case against me. How come there are 170 in the last few months? So no one believes what's going on. And
well, what many commentators will say, Mr. Khan, is that the reason you have this long string of allegations and criminal charges brought against you is because Pakistan has not been a functioning democracy for very, very many years now. And it is essentially a country that is run by the army. And it's interesting hearing you say that when you won power, the army didn't oppose you. In other words, they allowed you into government, and now they are disallowing you from government. That's the greater problem here, isn't it? That democracy just simply isn't thriving in Pakistan. What's the solution to that?
Well, you're right in a way. Half our history, we've been ruled by a 70-year history. Half has been ruled by military dictators. The other half by these two families. So I am a newcomer. I came out, 3.5 years was an anomaly in Pakistan. Now, your point is right that the military establishment, once it removed me, and establishment means the army chief. It's not some democratic institution. It's just one army, the chief, when he takes a decision, the disciplined army follows it. So he took a decision that I had to be ousted. What he expected was that my party would finish, as is normally whenever an establishment goes against a party, it has no chance of winning. But instead, the most incredible thing happened, in our first time in our history, unprecedented, that despite the establishment opposing me, we sweep all the by-elections. Hence came the assassination attempt on me in November, once we had won these 30 out of 37 by-elections. Then they wanted to remove me from the way. I had another assassination attempt on the 18th of March this year. And since then, once I survived that, I think this is now the last card of actually banning the party. Banning the biggest party means you are actually dismantling democracy in Pakistan. This is the main issue right now.
What keeps you going? Your critics accuse you of wanting to make money. That's one of the many allegations and charges brought against you. Your critics say it's about money, it's about power. Your life has been directly under threat. There have been 2 assassination attempts against you. You've got the army, who have controlled politics in Pakistan for many years. What is it that is really motivating Imran Khan to keep going?
Well, Sangita, look, people who want money do not risk their lives. I mean, what's the point of dead people can't use money? So who would take a risk when you've already had 2 assassination attempts? There was a third one which I preempted, and I was lucky because I found out beforehand. So who would risk their life for money? Look, for me, the reason why I came to politics in 27 years ago, when I did not have to, I was the biggest name in the country. I had whatever money I needed. I had enough of money, love and respect. Why would someone spend 22 years of their lives struggling and basically being in the wilderness? I mean, out of this time, 15 years I was in the wilderness, an outsider. No one thought I had a chance. Why would someone do that for financial gains when you had ample opportunity to do anything and make money? And secondly, power. Well, power to see my country a democratic country, rule of law. And where did I get inspired, by the way? In Britain. When I first came in as a teenager in Britain, it was the first time I saw a functioning democracy. I came in when we had military dictatorship in Pakistan at the time. Functioning democracy, rule of law, welfare state, fundamental rights, human rights being protected. That's what inspired me to start my movement 27 years ago, movement for justice, because justice brings rule of law, which brings real democracy, which means freedom, and which brings prosperity. And so this is a struggle for life. I mean, for 27 years, I've been struggling. Right now, I'm facing probably the toughest challenge of my life, because I have the establishment ranged, determined that I should not be part of the electoral process, and they're doing everything. I expect to be thrown into prison soon.
Now,
because 170 cases, sooner or later, I'll end up in jail.
You, of course, as an individual, face direct threat, but so do the people of Pakistan, in the sense that they face huge amounts of instability. What we have seen are Pakistanis, often young men, leaving Pakistan and making the dangerous journey to Europe. Many of them were aboard a ship that sank in the Mediterranean. Pakistan had a national day of mourning where we saw possibly up to 700 people killed, around 350 of them possibly Pakistani. What would you say to the families of those young men? You were in power. You're now fighting it out with the Pakistani government. The army is holding sway as it likes. And yet we are seeing young Pakistani men dying in the Mediterranean as they try and flee your country to find stability. What would you say to their families?
Well, look, Sangita, people go through the bad times provided they have hope. They think that, there's light at the end of the tunnel. So they go through tough times. What's happened in the last 14 months is unique. First time the people came, when my government was removed, it's never happened that hundreds and thousands of people came out in the street and protested.
But what would you say to the families of those dead people?
I'm coming to that. I'm trying to make you understand. So subsequently, what has happened is the instability, then the economy has tanked. From 6% growth rate a year back, we are now down to 0%. So there's unemployment in the country. But worse, people are not seeing any hope because the capital is leaving the country. Up is 900,000 professionals have left this country in the last few months because they've lost hope. But professionals, they could go through legal channels, get visas abroad. Then you have the poor people who, because of unemployment and then lack of hope, now they are the ones who take these, become these illegal immigrants on boats. And this is not just in Pakistan, in all those countries where you do not have rule of law, where you have no hope, where you have conflict, you have people fleeing to what they consider, land of milk and honey, where they can get jobs, and if they work hard, they can make a better living. And so they take all these risks. So unfortunately, it's a bit of both. In our countries, we have not been able to establish rule of law and give a level playing field for our people. On the other hand, the rich countries do not stop. And let me just make you understand this. Every year, there is billions of dollars which leave poor countries stolen by the ruling elite, and they end up in London houses and palaces and offshore accounts. It's like, the Russian oligarchs who brought in money into London and Western capitals. There is nothing done by the Western countries to prevent this flight of capital from poor countries. So the poor countries are getting poorer. The ruling elites are robbing the countries and taking the money out. The rich countries are getting richer. The gap is getting bigger. And so this immigrant problem is going to get worse unless the Western countries and the richer countries stop this flight of capital, the plunder of the developing countries by their ruling elites.